Well, hello everyone. You're welcome back to the Ex-Classmates 4 right here, and basically that talks about you for Ex-Classmate, and this right here actually talks about right here that I went and put together right here, like talk about from message in the bottle, and I'm like, I know that but I say that exactly about what does the letter say, knowing about for what the Bible says about for how well that we get along with people that we used to know, and maybe if you may have met them at a party or some sort or something like that, but I, want to also mention right here is talking about right here of this right here will be like an assignment, and you have right here is an example right here of like a sandcastle, and if anybody will warrant, we're like for what teaches us all, and for gift of appreciation. So if most may have seen it from the previous videos, I talk about for true enemies, and it's like for message, message in a bottle. This right here would be example right here of like a teacher and like a professor and if any students were think that is to that they meet up with some of their teachers that they used to know and thinking is toward it maybe not everybody's going to have what you call the most appreciated time and one of those most appreciated time that we may see less could be used toward it that yeah that they failed you at one time from a project or an assignment or maybe on a test that you failed the test maybe because you didn't do it right or something like that. But you see right here is that this right here will be example right here of something I was working on. I'm like, yeah, for like a sandcastle. And I was thinking about that this right here, I'm sure can use more Photoshop work right here, and as well as some more skills, but just to kind of, yeah, if anybody wanted to where yeah, that done quite a few videos and want to know is to where that, for anything, anything further that you want to say about maybe, people that you may have known and met at one point, but then after about maybe 5 or 10 years later that you meet up with them again. It could maybe be on Facebook or maybe during a job interview or meeting, and you're like worrying toward it whenever you see them again. It's like at the time, you're like, well, the best ways for maybe we weren't toward what does the Bible usually say about us toward it if they were to call which these people who at one point that they didn't like you for any reason or that maybe that they remember you from maybe a previous job and you're like weren't or yeah from a previous job or an event and something that what you call they came to like could come up to a scene toward it that you want to getting fired from a job or maybe anything maybe suspended or anything like that. But you have right here is talks about for whenever children grow up and whenever that they get older, whenever they grow up and start a new life as well as that they move on to something else and we weren't toward it. What's the best ways of how I handle that to whenever that, that whenever we do run into ex-classmates or anybody else that maybe from an from a previous relationship that happened nearly 10 years ago or maybe 5 years ago. And sometimes it's almost like that you just really had to introduce yourself again and just to kind of what you call is like really that if anything from the past was ever forgiven, but then on your hand that one question that they may ask is toward it what does this form say? I'm like so that's if anybody wants is toward it really that any problems or anything like that that were going on during your relationship or during that time they may say is that really that think about the most important reason here is to where that for for knowing about for we may think is toward it yeah that anything difficult challenges and sometimes you say yeah you had a job from a while back and then now that the situation goes by as to where they want to talk to the person who knows a little bit more about what's going on and so let's just say this message in a bottle was related to something that happened from those couple years ago, and then somebody finds it and think about it to where, well, can you tell us more about that? So I have shown right here is that this right here would be example right here of a teacher, and let's just say the teacher were to look at this and you say like don't fulfill the requirements or that they're just trying to understand about I don't know what you got right here, but the assignment asks for this or that, asks for you to write a paper or two, and sometimes it like with any students like with me though whenever I'm working on something or maybe studying for a test, that I may go ahead and sign, my name on the top and like this is my test And then that they say like usually that the teacher would usually mark like a star or a smiley face if you did you really well, and maybe if the score was an 85 or 90%. So that's just a thing about us, to where that whenever you meet up with teachers after about 4 years later and knowing about the best ways on how to handle that, especially, and some that may say that really that, oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah, well, yeah, well, what about it? Like, well, but still, that how many of us are going to think is to where that they remember somebody from a class or maybe from a project or something, and then they just mainly want to talk about as to where that anything that's an important concern of the matter, that really that for what teaches us all. And this right here, I drew right here. This was right here was an example right here of a drawing. You have right here the stairs and a sandcastle, and this reminds me of back when I was in the third grade. That there was like an English. It was an English book talking about castles of sand, included like a dog. And I mean, if anybody wanted to read it, any further details, but still that for classrooms, though, that most of the time with classrooms, that whenever students, sometimes the teachers or whoever, that they'll be real curious and knowing about each student, the student that was working on something, and they see that or they find something, and they wonder to where after about maybe 5 or 10 years later that, can you tell me what this is about, Matthew? Like, well, I know why. I remember that you've doing this or that, or maybe if you don't remember all the details, but still that the purpose about when we run in, whenever we meet up at reunite, or whenever we re-meet with our ex, if it's going to be classmates, previous classmates, how we react to that, and sometimes that they want to start talking about, something that was going on in class that, yeah, that, really that, well, why does it concern you? Or if anybody say that, really that, please, it's none of your concern. It's not, yeah, that it could have maybe been a mistake. And if anybody weren't, or something that you were working on that was done, something that was done by error, and sometimes something that was done by mistake, and then you're like warned or that that I don't know why everybody, all you all just kind of making a big conversation about this whenever they was just if anybody warned toward it, that that after about 4 or 5 years later, then people start talking about it, and it's like warrant to know as to where that really that for if it's the teacher or if it's anybody else, maybe if it was a manager that you were working with at one time, that anything about you that they didn't quite understand until now, and anything that you may have been working on from nearly 10 years ago that not everybody quite understood until 15 years later, and they start asking questions, and then they get a better understanding. So if that's what it's all about, you're getting a better understanding about you and your work, and they may say that, yeah, we failed you during the time, but then 15 years later, that there's a guarantee that we may pass you, just to get a better of understanding about what you're trying to talk about, what you're trying to do, especially. But you have right here is that this right here, yeah, would be example right here of like a village, and if anybody wants to, or yeah, castles of sand right here, and we can maybe write a paragraph or two about this. And like, remember doing this like in fifth grade, is that for anything about castles of sand, and the castle is on the east coast or so of the ocean, or on the west coast, and people walking, like people who actually work there at the castle, or if it's anything about that the children, and then the mommy or somebody like that, or they're walking on the shores, east of the castle or something like that. So whenever we draw a picture, and sometimes if we weren't to where that does our handwriting, and this right here will be my handwriting right here. That the same with the message on in the bottle is that if anybody say that by the time something looks familiar, by the time something becomes readable, it just seems like to where that's whenever the people may start getting carried away, even though if it was 10 years ago, are we on page 4? Okay, if we are, then let's go to page 5, and so if anybody wanted toward it, yeah, that you talk about for whenever you meet up with some of your classmates that that known you from school, they may have met you at a party or any type of gathering And they're like, Warren, to where if that's supposed to be your work right there, can you tell us more information about it? I can, you know what? It was just for practice, really. I don't know why there's questions and concerns remain, but still, that nice. Thanks for getting too nosy, and if anybody weren't to where that, yeah, that about how curious people would be as to where that for those who really want to get nosy, including what you call between for true enemies and as well as for gift of appreciation. For knowing about what does the Bible say about a lot of the stuff. And some we say about forgiveness though, but still that those classmates who may have been mean to us maybe at the beginning, but then they become nicer maybe as time goes on, or maybe that they just kind of thank us toward it, a lot for what you were doing from the beginning. That really that they kind of realize a little bit more about why that people like what you do and your sentences, that a teacher or a principal that may said at one time that I have absolutely no idea what this is all about. But I tell you one thing that maybe you did do a good job of, and for teaches us all about what this was and what this is, and so at the time it seems like to where any message in the bottle that relates to the future, because like you say that no matter what you write, it seems like that maybe whenever somebody else finds it, that's whenever that they want to do research about it. And they're like, hey, well, we had to, something that you would see on one of those movies, but sometimes it's like, well, we just had to meet the person. We had to relate to the person who did the work. And so that's just a thing that if anybody warns us toward it, for anything that I do and anything what you call for anything any moves or anything like that, any special dance or something like that, really that who else could be watching. But still that you have right here, and then you have right here is the teacher. So let's just say at one time that some students that may think is toward it, yeah, that the teacher failed you. The teacher failed you because they didn't quite understand what this was. The assignment asks you to write about 5-page paragraph, including a sentence fragment, including those that the castle, and then such as a subject matter. It could be the people or something like that. Maybe a little background, and maybe there's a pet or two in the background, and then anything about your site for storylines. And let's just say the student were to just draw a picture of whatever that they imagine in your mind and just say it's like for what teaches us all. And this could maybe be in black and white. Anybody teacher would probably say that black and white is non-acceptable math. You need to do something that uses at least 3 colors, and that we can't read this right here. You include quotations in between. So that's just the thing about with anybody that say that if they're going to be working with managers or teachers or classmates, that they may say something negative about us toward it, that we don't like your work because you didn't follow the directions right, that type of stuff. But really that seems like we're all going to have something to remember by. And if it's going to be lesson learned or anything like that for what shows love, especially if it's going to be for true enemies, and then if it's going to be for message in a bottle. But this is another thing I want to talk about too. Is like whenever I was in the 3rd grade, I can remember the teacher called me 2 times to come get my English, my school stuff. That was in the 3rd grade, and I can remember one of it was the book was called Castles of Sand. So it was like an English book, and you say do studies about the words, but still that you're like Warren toward it. Whenever you go out to the beach or somewhere and thinking necessarily to where that castles, not all of them I guess are going to be easy to build, but let's just say that it was not so hard for me to draw the details right here. But this right here is supposed to be like maybe like a basement right here. Quite a few castles. It's if some of them even have basements, and I can go ahead and I can zoom in. I can zoom in right here just to kind of show everybody here that what I drew right here, because I know this right here may be a little bit more harder if we were trying to build something like this in sand. I'm like, if sand was wet enough, and then it's kind of like, if you want to call it clay to where it sticks. And yeah, but you have right here is a sand castle. You have right here is like a basement floor right here of the sand castle. And then right here will be like the stairs right here to which lead to the castle. So if anybody wanted toward it, using a magnifying glass and just kind of study the work right here, like right here in the center, and then knowing for anything about English skills, it's like you have right here is the people. What about the people? And I know if the teacher were to be looking at this and looking at it and reviewing it, and then sometimes it's like say, okay, well here's my assignment, and then it's like, well, if I could make a suggestion, Matthew, I would suggest that you go ahead and change. So if anybody wanted toward it, yeah, that well, what do we call it for whenever you do from what the directions say or close to what the directions say, and then the teacher wants to make a suggestion, and sometimes you're like, well, that should have been included in the assignment, and they'll let you know that yeah, the smiley face, of course, yeah, that the star and the smiley face was not included in the assignment, but let's just say that, well, what do we call that? I'm like, yeah, that whenever you follow the directions, and let's just say if you follow it as an order, that you don't do anything else other than that they ask you to please draw a theme or anything such as what you call if it's supposed to be a theme or like a presentation about something about sand, or maybe a English project related to like anything about the maybe about the Bible, or anything like that. I'm like anything that for English skills is toward it. It's going to basically show you, like, it's going to give you an idea about between person, place, or thing, and sentence fragment, and then that nouns and verbs, and so it's like knowing about the people of maybe of Jerusalem or something like that, and you're going to go ahead and draw in some details about for what you would imagine in your mind, like, oh, a sand castle right here, the castle right here that's located on near the beach, and it's like it could maybe be parts of maybe in Europe or somewhere like that, and then maybe Costa Rica, or so some country like that they say that yeah, build a sand castle. What country would it be located in? And then a few other things that they want to mention also. So that's just the thing, is to where if anybody want to where they look at your work and then they see your assignment, but then now it's like, okay, nice going, Matthew, but we would ask to see this now. I'm like, that was not included in the assignment, and so let's just say that after about 3 years later, it's possible that that teacher's going to say that, hey, you remember me? Yeah, that I was your teacher. You up there at like say, yeah. Well, what about it? But really, that your best ways of how to handle that, especially, is that if anybody wanted to, or you're going, you're going to meet up with your classmate again, and you're going to meet up with your teacher again, or somebody, or your counselor, and they're going to say, oh, I'm sure they're going to remember quite a few details. And sometimes it's like, don't even bother refreshing their memory, because you know that they're going to want to start talking about something that you don't want to bring up or anything like that. But what does the Bible, and if anybody wanted toward it, you'll try to zoom in right here on the Bible. So really, about for the verse math used right here is that we want to, what does the Bible say about a lot of this stuff? About for what teaches us the lesson about what you call getting along with one another, as well as if it's going to be what you call, yeah, you met this person at a party, but then you had your fights, your arguments at time. If we want to call us toward it, that somebody that you were working with at one time, that are they considered what you call your true enemies? Are they considered like, or they want to leave a message for you in the Bible stays to where I really love your work, no matter how complicated it gets. I really love your work. So that's just the thing, is to where that I mean, and I can tell anybody here that what does the rest of this message say? I haven't really figured that out, but just to kind of say is to where it's basically that for education forever is that whenever class is over with, it just seems like toward it it's the type of moment toward it maybe a few things that were missed during the time that you were in school, and just take it about is that for those who remember you from school or maybe from a job, and that you're like worrying toward it, really that how many people really want to know the type of career that I do have, and I'll probably be getting into later on in the future, that I just really think that, do you recommend that job to anybody? I'm like, no, I don't. What's the reason? Can't explain why, other than the fact about, the teacher at the beginning didn't like my work, but then now it's like that you're going to have maybe other people who are going to be extremely curious and just think about it to her, really, was it ever a job? Well, if you're talking about job, if you're talking about something that pays the big bucks or something that pays a fair share salary, then maybe that I would probably say that, yeah, it's something that kept me busy, but really, it's maybe if it's not always guaranteed to pay really anything, but if anybody warrants toward that, really that the type of appreciation that maybe that they're looking for is to where that they want to know the person who had managed the work, who did the work, and just to say it's like we want to know something a little bit further about what's going on with this. Yeah, it's like because maybe not all assignments. Maybe not all assignments are all thrown away just because they had nothing to do with what's required or what's asked for or what was ordered. But then on your hand, it kind of puts a person like me in a situation to where, if you didn't do it right, then you're out of luck getting those points back. But anyway, but talk about here if like you say for ex-classmates and knowing about you for 4, ex-classmate 4, and for everyone, thanks for watching, and then let me know what you think as well. But talk about for ex-classmates and know about for what we think and how we handle whenever we talk to friends that we used to know, classmates that we used to know, and one of the first things that we may mention is about us to her that well. It seems like the teacher liked your work compared to my work, and I don't know why. That you're kind of curious and knowing about anything about me necessarily, but still that for those who show that they care about what's going on with our education as well, and for anything that's going on, the grade book and as well as for the job, because I'm sure anybody that may warrant to work that really between what is considered a mistake and what's considered what you call that anything about an understanding, but just think about as to where that for those who show more that they care, and then for how much that they show that they support as well. But other than that, for gift of appreciation, thanks for watching, everyone. Manny May 25, and have a great day.